Hello, it's me again, MorbidSleep. Today's video focuses on art versus artist and the age-old question, should we consume and or enjoy media that was created by bad people? This question has a few layers, and the first one I want to kind of bring up is the question of morality in general. Oxford Languages defines morality as principles concerning the distinction between right and wrong or good and bad behavior. Ethics is defined as moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. So I think the most obvious part of this discussion, in a really broad sense, is that morality is subjective to some extent. There are some things that we agree on as a culture, like murder, abuse, and pedophilia are bad and wrong and we should never do them. But other things, such as not standing up for a particular cause or using insulting language to describe groups of people, are less universally considered to be immoral, or at least more hotly debated on exactly the parameters of the immorality of those actions. In the art versus artist debate, there's also the question of where to draw the line. So, for example, you may feel that failing to openly support a specific cause is wrong and immoral, but don't consider it bad enough to stop consuming that media. Whereas another person could feel that failing to support that cause is tantamount to actively opposing that cause, and they might choose to stop supporting that creator. Neither of these lines are wrong. Your boundaries should be right for you. We should be able to sleep at night, and if your personal code of ethics calls for this or that, then you go for it. The other facet here, of course, is what do we as consumers or fans actually do when an artist does not meet our moral standards? Canceling is barely a real thing, but it is a fun word. Nowadays, people use the word cancelled as if it has a powerful meaning, like censored or crucified. In its original use as an American slang term, cancelled actually means something more along the lines of boycott, or move on from a person or thing which is causing a negative influence in your life. On Twitter, if you are cancelled, and that's in very heavy quotes, this usually means you lose followers and are tagged in antagonistic or hateful tweets aimed at you, or just mentioned in hateful tweets. I guess you would never know if you were just mentioned but never tagged. Some public figures, especially women and queer people, even receive death threats from the people trying to cancel them. And sometimes you can even be doxxed and harassed in your real life. But I think this isn't really like canceling, this is just bullying, abuse, and harassment. No matter what a person has or is alleged to have said or done, nobody deserves to be swatted, doxxed, or sent death threats. No matter how rich and famous or evil and cruel a person is, we should never be sending them death threats, doxing them, or harassing them in real life. Amplifying the issue, talking about it, supporting the victims if there are victims, and unfollowing that person are more effective and responsible ways of demanding justice for wrongdoing. However, when people are discussing art versus artist, we do usually simply mean the original slang term, which is to simply stop consuming that media or stop, cut it out of our lives, basically. In the case of actors or directors, usually it would come in the form of no longer watching those films, or maybe even selling or throwing out any copies of the films that you might have. For musicians, we do the same. We throw out or sell any of our merchandise and stop listening to those albums or songs or the entire work that that artist has created. The part of the conversation that I think has been especially highlighted more recently with the revelations of Ms. Rowling's blatant transphobia is mainly,
okay, we know the creator is bad, we don't agree with them, now what?
do we have to hate Harry Potter and spit on its grave? Well, luckily, no. Most conversations about J.K. Rowling tend to be centered around the concept of death of the author. A piece of work that the author intended to be read in one way can always be interpreted completely differently in another way. J.K. Rowling created one of, if not the most, influential children's fantasy series, which many kids all over the world were, and probably still are, able to relate with, largely due to its themes of being different, equality, fitting in, being misunderstood, and the importance of tolerance and acceptance. All themes that trans people, for example, especially young trans people, probably find very relatable in their real lives. The positive message of muggles, magical folk, and the mix of those two needing to get along with each other and respect one another can be really meaningful for all of humanity, all of the time. And in this way, that particular piece of media can be removed from J.K. Rowling's personal transphobia and reclaimed by fans who disagree with her views. However, not everyone will want to do this. Of course, some people would prefer to just not even go there. If it works more for you to just not even touch J.K. Rowling's work with a 10-foot pole, then that's what you need to do. All of this is basically to make the argument that it is possible to behave morally within your own principles and still be able to enjoy certain media that you personally disagree with. But you might be saying, well, being an influential writer with a huge platform and using it to spread fear and misinformation about a marginalized group is really not relatable to the metal community. MorbidSleep, I thought you were a metal YouTube channel, not a mainstream young adult fiction channel. Well, wipe away your tears, dear child, and listen up. You're old enough now, and your mother and I have something very important to tell you. Yes, you are adopted, but more importantly, so there's this super uncontroversial and politically correct musician that you've probably never heard of. He's super obscure and totally kind and altruistic, and he's basically just a perfect angel. Varg Vikernes does not have as large of a platform and audience as J.K. Rowling. And full disclosure, I do follow his Twitter account. Oh yes, I do. Varg Vikernes has committed a grand total of 3 official and legally recognized crimes against humanity: murder, inciting racial hatred, and being a fucking poser. Oh no, wait, I read that wrong. Arson. Arson is his 3rd offense. Although technically it was the first one that he actually committed. Murder, of course, I think most people seem to agree that murder is kind of a bad idea and kind of like a rude thing to do to people. Arson kind of sucks, but like no one was hurt. And your opinion on arson is gonna really depend on how you view property and historical architecture. Inciting racial hatred is his most recent offense. And that one is actually really hard for people to understand sometimes, like what exactly is racial or inciting racial hatred. This video isn't really about like what hate speech and racial hatred are and how that fits into, freedom of speech, because some people will try and argue that hate speech is protected under freedom of speech, which it is not. I can't think of a single country where that is the case, so it's not considered under legal definitions. So basically, for the purposes of this video, I will say what Varg did and continues to do on his blog in particular, but also on Twitter sometimes, does absolutely qualify as the legal definition of inciting racial hatred in France. And so on the most practical level, we will take it for granted that he was acting illegally and that it was a bad thing to do. So now we're left with the question, if we are taking these things for granted, then thing bad, now what? The short answer is obviously whatever the fuck you want. I'm not gonna stand here and tell you what you can and can't do. I mean, I have a fucking body pillow of Varg Vikernes, so who am I to judge? But I am going to personally agree with a lot of other people on the internet and how they define separating the art from the artist when they consume media. I do feel that supporting baddies is tantamount to supporting their bad behavior. And in order for me to sleep at night, I prefer to not fund Vikernes' life and lifestyle. For me, This is because I see Vargvikernes's immoral or unethical behavior as continuing. No matter how much Burzum merch I do not buy, Euronymous is still going to be dead. I can't bring Euronymous back. I can't heal what happened to his family. I can't heal what happened to his friends. And I can't even heal the PTSD I'm sure Varg Vikernes himself also experiences from that time in his life. As well, because I strongly believe in supporting smaller, especially local musicians, especially those who do have ethical practices. Now, that doesn't have to mean that they just don't murder people, but I feel like it should also mean that they also support other musicians in their region. Things like that. But the flip side to that coin is not supporting musicians who are potentially using their platform and income to cause harm to the culture and to other people. So this also, besides people who are literally harming people by killing them or inciting racial hatred, I think that this also counts for people who are putting down other artists, smaller artists, or using just unethical business practices in general. Like, that's a little hard to track down, but that's how I feel. But I still listen to and enjoy Burzum's music. And yes, that even includes some of the newer dungeon synth stuff. I know that's a very controversial thing, is he left black metal and now makes dungeon synth and like neo-folk. But I still am here for it. There are only a couple albums that I really thought were really boring and dumb. My fucking battery died again. This always happens to me. I ran out of space or my battery dies. It's because I just take it all in one shot, so all of the parts where I fuck up, I just have to edit out later, but it just means that I have like 40 minutes of footage. So anyway, now on a slightly different camera. I still listen to and enjoy Burzum's music. You can see my backpack in the shot.
How do I fix that? I can't really. There's nothing I can do about it. You're just gonna have to see my backpack.
Oh, and I can also appreciate the aesthetic qualities, especially of his earlier work and image. You can't deny that young Vikernes had amazing hair back in the day. That's just not up for debate. I also think that refusing to listen to a specific artist's music just on principle can get sticky. Obviously, if the mere mention or sound of the music, who has done wrong that you personally are quite affected by, causes you to feel those extremely negative feelings, or even relive bad memories, which I understand is the case for many other black metal musicians and metalheads who were part of the black metal community in the early 90s, then absolutely you should refuse to listen. Like I always say here in this video, I've been saying it, you need to be able to sleep at night, you need to be able to live with yourself, and you need to be living your best life, #girlboss. So take care of yourself first. However, if you are refusing to listen, like sort of just on principle, like you are trying to be high and mighty, I guess, not to judge you, I'm worried about you, I'm concerned, because I think this opens you up to criticisms and accusations of hypocrisy. Because something that I always wonder about is like, what if somebody catches you listening to something that you had no idea had a similarly bad creator? Like, what if you are really openly like anti-Vargvikernes, you never listen to it, if somebody puts on Dunkelheit, you're like, you fucking karate chop that bitch, and then you're just sitting in your room listening to, I don't know, like John Lennon, and people like, I mean, John Lennon abused his wife, right? Like, you do know that, right? So then you have to sort of apply that logic also to John Lennon. I ran out of storage on my SD card, and I'm running out of storage on my internal storage on my phone too, so let's try and make this quick, I guess. That's something I always wonder with the moralizing and the mob mentality about boycotting or canceling certain media, is we can't possibly know everything a person has ever done or said. I enjoy Dødheimsgard's music, but I don't know anything about Dødheimsgard. I haven't done any research about them. I don't even know how many members are in the band or if it's a solo project. I'm not even really sure which country it is from. I think it's Danish. So if whoever is in Dødheimsgard has, murdered or kidnapped or assaulted or abused anyone or even fucking shoplifted from Lidl, I have no idea. Maybe one day I'll be sitting around enjoying some Oslagte Gud, and the ethics police will bust in and let me know and inform me that I have been enjoying the music of a baby killer. Who knows? It's the I think we should be consistent and we should be forgiving. That's the end of the video.